Hey everybody, I'm here with Brooks. He works at Shopify, here to talk about React Router 7 and all cool things web dev related. And the way I met Brooks is through his amazing meetup that honestly I haven't been back for a while. I need to fix that. But he runs Remix Meetup here in Austin, Texas, and always fun. So welcome. How are you today?
Hey Paul, thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty well.
Nice. And yeah, thanks for being here. So I wanted to talk to you because I wanted to just get a update around React Router 7, all the cool things you're all doing, kind of talk about some use cases. I know like everybody has their favorite framework. And when I talk to people, I always tell them, pick the right framework for your use case.
hmm
There is no one fit solution for everything. And I think it's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, super happy to talk about what we've been working on, what we are working on. Yeah, all the different things. Yeah, where do you want to start? Do you just want to talk about like React Router 7, everything's going
Yeah, I
on
know you
there?
guys just had a couple of announcements. Maybe we could start
hmm
there. And if I have any follow-up questions, I could ask.
Yeah, that's a good question. That might help kind of reset where people are at. We obviously we've had a pretty interesting history of is it Remix, is it React Router? So, like, are we going back? Are we going forward? All that kind of stuff. We're at the point now where I think like the story going forward is going to be the simplest. But yeah, to kind of to level set a little bit. Basically, back in 2020, when Remix first started, it was a company back then. The idea of it was to be a full stack React framework, very focused on server side rendering. Like React server components didn't even exist at the time. So this was really the solution to building these kind of full stack frameworks. And then Remix open source in 2021, long journey of it continuing to build and become a better framework. It was always built on React Router, so it was always sharing code between React Router and Remix. So Remix would get really good or get better, and then they would take features and put them back into React Router, and React Router would get better and continue to have a lot of users, and they'd keep building up Remix or make a new version of it. So we finally got to a point where we knew basically what we wanted, like that framework to be. We were pretty happy with what we had. There's still some features we wanted to add, like React Server Components is the main one, but middleware, some other things. So we definitely still wanted to continue building it, but we were pretty happy with what we had built in terms of the frameworks, in terms of a framework in the React ecosystem. But we also had like some kind of crazier ideas, or just some much more like bigger ideas that are outside of what like the React roadmap specifically was allowing for. So these were always percolating in the background. So basically, what we figured was easiest to do was just to put everything we had into React Router, let that be our React framework, and we'll continue that. We have like a steering committee now. We have a open governance system that we're kind of spinning up. We're just going to let that story continue. But at the same time, the Remix team, and especially right now, it's Michael and Ryan, our founders, are really building what they want Remix to be, kind of the next version of it, taking some of those core ideas of what they set out to build, like those principles that they had for building Remix, but really building it for the world of web development that we find ourselves in 2025. So that's the brief history.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I guess like my question would be, like Router 7 is so awesome now that you have like the framework mode. And if anybody like use React Remix version 2, like very, very similar. And it's so, since you could get so much done, what is the kind of motivation for them to continue with Remix? If someone is like wondering, like is it like like fundamentally they think that the way web is changing in 2025, or maybe it could have something to do with the vendor lock. Like I don't know what the exact motivations are, but like from based on what you know, why is it still kind of like let's continue thinking about Remix and the future of building things in the web.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's one just this aspect of like there is stuff that's good, and so you as a user, like you use what exists that you're happy with. Like that's always going to be the right option. Don't sit there waiting for the next big thing. Like if you need to build something right now, and you're like, should I wait for Remix? The new version of Remix to come out? Like I would say no. Don't wait for tech that doesn't exist. That's true of everything. Keep your eyes on it. Keep learning new things. And keep exploring new things. But yeah, no, just use the thing that exists, and that's good. So yeah, what we made we think is really good. But what they want to build with Remix, there's several like ideas that go into it, and they laid this out in our blog post, announcing like what we're doing with Remix. So there's a couple ideas that are kind of are really leading it. So one is like, yeah, kind of the vendor lock-in and the bundler story for various reasons. I'm not going to get into all of them, but Ryan and Michael really, they want to kind of build their own thing. So as long as we are built on top of React, we're going to be following React's their roadmap basically. And so we're fine with that for React Router. That's what we want React Router to be. In fact, we want it to look more and more like React instead of a fight against React. So it'll embrace React server components. That'll be like a first class citizen. You're not forced to use them though. That was a big concern a lot of people had, and maybe a big frustration people have had with Next.js. They feel like they're forced to use it if they're using the latest and greatest app router. We don't have an intention of doing that necessarily. So that's like our React Router story. And then with Remix, yeah, so like removing kind of the bundler, they're really trying to like see how far they can get without a bundler story. So that's like a big part of it for sure. We can get into that a little bit more, what that means if it's helpful. But they also want it to be built like very much on web APIs, so that it is like that's the thing that Remix always has been about. But it's just always embracing like JavaScript that can work both on your server and on your client. That's just always going to be a great way to build JavaScript apps that can be full stack and can work on different platforms like Dino, like Cloudflare, whatever it may be. So that's still a very important piece. They also want to be like even more full stack. They want to be like really kind of what the Ruby on Rails or the Laravel is in those communities. They really want to build that for JavaScript, and building that within the React ecosystem. Like React is already kind of trying to have their own take on that with RSCs. And I think that Michael and Ryan just have their own ideas of how they can do that. And then finally, they want to build it in such a way that it's going to be very useful for like the kind of the world of AI that we're entering into. And that's like the piece that has the most speculation. Because a lot of people are like, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're just adding MCP servers to your dev tools? Does that mean that you're trying to like just do an AI pivot and you're just totally embracing AI? So that piece is like going to be, we're going to explain that a lot more and go into it. But the short of it is basically we have found that both users building software right now looks very different than it did, and is going to continue looking different. There's a lot of things that are similar, but like we have this brand new tool set of like AI and of all these like these agentic ways of coding and like Cursor and Cloud Code and all these things. So that really affects us for one. And then you also have the aspect of how are LLMs, how are agents interacting with your websites? That might be different than a human is going to interact with your website. So what are the fundamental tools that we need as web developers to build a web that is going to increasingly be used by both agents as well as humans? So those are kind of like the philosophies behind it, without even getting into like the actual core feature set of it, because that is still very much an active development.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things, I think people get confused with the branding, and they thought like of Remix one thing and it's based on React, and now you have React Router 7. Like people kind of get attached to this naming. I think what I
Sure.
like what you did is you moved all the features that work very well. They're very like in Remix, you moved it to React Router 7. So someone who got used to using Remix version 2, you could basically have the same experience with using React Router 7, the framework mode. Or if you don't need it, you could just use React Router 7. And I like this idea that you're separating the two, and you have this new vision of what you think the future of web development looks like. And you now have this opportunity to kind of take that vision and make it a reality, which could be completely or slightly different from what people are used to. And I think, it's good that now the team has that kind of like space to do those things and not being beholden to like Remix has to look like this certain thing, because it's like, hey, you want to build your app, you have React Router 7, works amazingly well. You could use it in the framework mode. And I think it's now more accessible to like a lot more people, I feel like. So I think from my standpoint, it was a good idea. And I am very curious to see what Remix 3, when it gets closer to what the dream idea is, what it would look like. So I do want to bring the conversation back to React Router 7 because like I think it's awesome. And one thing I kind of, it depends who you talk to. Like I recently just talked to someone who's using Astra. I think Astra is great. I think Next.js is great. I think so many different frameworks are great, but they're great for the particular use case of the application that you're building. And in certain like places, like I was talking to someone who were building like a huge enterprise level app, like they're using React, they were literally like, we can't use Next.js because it just doesn't fit what we're building. We're doing
Mhm.
micro front ends, like blah blah. And so it's like they had like very specific use cases. They went with React Router 7. It, like most of the team was familiar with that paradigm because before
Mhm.
they, and all that. And so in your mind, a lot of people when they like talk about Next.js, some people really love server components. Some people they're like, oh, I don't want to use them. And so what is I know you just recently released a kind of like the preview for
Mhm.
React server components in React Router 7. So can you speak on that a little bit more? Give us some kind of like the thought and the philosophy behind.
Yeah, definitely. So React Router is like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old project at this point. So it's been there for a while. And at this point, like there's definitely aspects of React Router that definitely show its age in terms of like those 10 years. So we're always trying to balance that, but at the same time, some of the older stuff, it's also like the most battle tested, used all over the place. Like so many websites that you visit every single day are using React Router. And so this is why we kind of ended up with like these different modes that we have. So we have like the declarative routing mode, which is just like your routes, like JSX routing, and is very much for the SPA routing. And then we have like our data mode, which are data routers, which is basically a way to get loaders and actions, and kind of it's really a way to build up your own framework if you need to, but using React Router because your router is really like where you kind of want your data to live. A lot of times, it's very much like the first place that you're going to be interacting with, like, oh, okay, the user is trying to load this page, or they're submitting an action against this page. What do I want to actually update? What do I want to change? What do I want to show them? And then framework mode, which is just like this Vite plugin that bundles that all together. So we have these three different modes, and to me, it's like, while like that may be a little bit complicated to people, or maybe they just want the one thing like a Next.js has. But even Next.js has pages versus app router, so even that, like all projects over time are going to like develop these different things because they're trying to fit multiple use cases. But to me, React Router really does provide it provides the most like tools for you to kind of pick your own journey and what works best for what you need. And so like the framework mode is the most like put together kind of done piece of that. But even we try to have it pretty guts out. We try to allow you to like adjust every single thing that you'd want to. We have like an entry, like a client entry. We have a server entry. You can control your server completely. So we really try to make it built in such a way that you are in control. You can change whatever you need to for whatever fits your use case. So that's very much like how React Router, I would say, like the biggest differentiator with it within specifically the React framework ecosystem. As for like RSC, it's a great question. So we do have a preview, and yeah, we have a blog post on this and a couple different demos on how it works.
Yeah, and I'll
The
link in the
preview,
description for all that stuff,
okay,
just if people
perfect,
wondering. Yeah.
great, great, great. The reason it's a preview right now is partly because it's actually built on Parcel. So React Router framework mode is built on Vite. Vite does not have like first class support for RSC at the moment. That's something the Vite team is working on. And when they finish that, we will absolutely add it into framework mode. But what we've kind of figured out, and not really so much me, but definitely like really smart people on my team, especially Jacob Eby, has like really architected a lot of this work, is we really want React Router, especially that core, that kind of like the data mode, the data router. We want that to be able to work with pretty much any bundler that supports RSC. We don't want you to have to wait on us necessarily, and want you to have the power to be able to use the bundler you want at that level. If you're using framework mode, that's still going to be very much built on Vite, so we're going to wait on Vite for that. But yeah, with like the data mode, we're actually doing a lot of work to bring RSC support to the data router level first before it even probably gets to the framework level. And so it is a preview because we are having to undo a lot of like our internals so that we can leverage RSC as like our core feature set for handling all the bundling and the code splitting and all these different things. So we'll have more information on that in the future because it definitely like there's a big architectural shift that it does. But for the end user, your experience with it should be very opt-in. It should be very easy. You can send down RSC from loaders. You can just send down components from your loaders. You can make a whole route an RSC route if you want. You can make your entire app an RSC app if you want, or you can just never use it at all, and you'll be your app won't even care about it. Won't even care that you have that capability. You just decided not to use it, basically.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's pretty awesome. I'm excited to see. And so basically, at the moment, in terms of like bringing into framework mode, you're saying limited by white. I keep always mispronouncing or
No,
wheat.
that's okay.
I always get it wrong. It's like every time. And so it's even though I work for a French company, I should probably like be better.
Yeah,
You
learn
know,
some
like
French.
no excuse
Yeah.
on my part. But so once
That'd be
they implement it, then you'll. The goal is to bring into a framework mode, but at the moment now you do have to use a different bundler. Uh, so that's pretty cool. And I know you also I just recently released like middlewares. Can you talk a little
Mhm.
bit about that in React?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so no, that's a great question. So middleware has honestly been one of the biggest like missing features from Remix, or like from even the Remix days, the Remix V1 and V2. People were always asking for this. We had plans for it and probably rebuilt it like several different times. So the short of it is it now is in React Router 7. It is behind an unstable flag. We should be getting that finished up pretty soon here. The biggest thing is it's a really big feature, and middleware is like it's a very big security like target vector essentially. Like it's a great spot to exploit security concerns. So we just want to make sure that it is correct and make sure that it is pretty bug free. And then also it's a pretty big API, so we want to make sure that our users are happy with the API before we finally ship it. But we've gotten good feedback. I think we're nearing the point to which we can finally release it as like, or rather, we can remove the unstable flag. So you can use it right now all you want. It's just the caveat of like, hey, this might
Yeah.
not be 100% done, and we may break the API on you in between like major versions. Whereas once we take that unstable flag off, those statements will not be true anymore. There may be bugs still. There's always, that's always true. Buyer beware. No matter what you're using, we definitely try to test this stuff as much as possible. But like everyone, I don't know, we broke the internet like a week ago, and anyone's capable of it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I was gonna say if someone says we have no bugs, they didn't make anything. They didn't build anything.
yeah, you should be.
But
Yeah, exactly.
it's
You should be
like
very
it's
skeptical
you
of
basically have
movements.
nothing at that point
Yeah, exactly.
because it's only normal. Yeah, no,
Yep.
that's awesome. I'm really excited to kind of see like all the improvements that you are and continue to make in React Router 7. I think it's amazing solution. I love the fact that now you have the option to have that framework mode that's very similar
Hmm.
to Remix because like I fell in love with Remix and like I switched to Remix too, and then now like at first I was like, really love like Remix the name. It's just like so
Yeah.
cool. And now I'm like have an app that I migrated from Remix to like React Router 7, and I'm like, it's just basically the same thing, basically. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
and to me like that's very exciting. And I think like sometimes when people have these like conversations, it's like they get really tied into this like remix naming rather than like, hey, you have all these features that basically like
Yeah.
allow you to continue to build cool things, and so just go build the thing that you want. And I'm kind of glad for your team now that you made that switch. Remix could be this vision that
Yeah.
they want to kind of explore. And with that being said, that new vision, that future, I know you were talking a little bit about AI. Like, I want to ask some like general questions. Like, how do you think like
Sure.
the ecosystem of just web development is changing from what is the role of a developer in like the world of AI, and then also like you mentioned a little bit of like how's that going to like in your mind dictate how the ecosystem will change from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely want to caveat by saying like I'm not like an AI expert. I'm hardly even like an enthusiast. I definitely do try to like use it for my day to day. Like two reasons. Like one is I want to understand how my users are using it. That's the main thing. I want to understand
Yeah.
how people who are building React Router apps are using it. So that's very important. And then secondarily, it's like if it can actually help me build something faster, I want to use it faster without compromising on like the actual quality. So like I recently released our store, shop.remix.run. And honestly, like a lot of it was built with Cursor. A lot of it was built by Cursor, like a lot of very specific features. A lot of the animations, like Cursor would take the first swing at, and then I would kind of adjust it and figure out some pieces, and then I would get Cursor to come back and work on like the micro details that I needed fixed. And when I say Cursor, like I tried to use every model I could, all the latest ones, like all of the Anthropic models and Google's Gemini 2.5 or whatever when that one was out, and I think I used OpenAI's models, but it didn't matter because like I was just trying to get the experience of actually like using these things for a workflow. So that can transition into like saying like, okay, for a developer, what would, yeah, is AI just coming for a job? Should we just be scared or just give up completely, or should we all just try to be like vibe coders? Is that the goal? I think like thinking in those dichotomies is just really unhelpful personally. I think that if you're running away from this stuff, or just trying to be a luddite, like that's fine. You might survive for a while. I don't know. I'm not going to predict like what the future is going to be, but if you're finding that's working for you, that's cool. But I just really try to like introspect and like why are you against this thing? Why are you afraid of this? Is it because you feel like your skills are threatened? Is it because you think that it's just overhyped, and anything that feels overhyped you want to ignore? Because if it's those things, like I resonate with that. But at the same time, like I think it's really easy to be blind to the actual value of this stuff. So again, I built like the most of the store, even being someone who's pretty skeptical of like hype cycles and pretty skeptical of like all the really dumb posts I see on the internet where people are keep telling us, every what's the joke is like every 6 months or every no, we've been 2 years into people saying in 6 months we're all gonna lose
Yeah,
our jobs to AI. Clearly that's not true. I just got a raise, so I'm doing pretty okay. I'm pretty happy. But the reality of it is, we should just we should be curious, and we should continue trying to learn. To me, this is another tool. Just like I learn new libraries and always stay on top of like what's coming out. Just like I'm always trying to understand the web better and how the web actually works. I approach this the same way, and I think we would all do best to think of it that way, to experiment, to play with it. Your instinct shouldn't necessarily be like, if it was written by AI, it's therefore bad, or if it's written by AI, it's therefore good. Like that's the you're just like looking at the medium. You're just thinking about, did I use the right paint or not? You're not actually
yeah.
looking at like, did I create the right painting?
Yeah, and it's definitely developer has some responsibility of what their AI is doing because I had some
Absolutely.
amazing, beautiful failures where I'm like, man, I should have get saved my previous code to
Yeah.
get up
Yeah.
sooner because now
Yeah.
I
I
have to
still gotta
backtrack.
do
I'm
those
like,
practices.
what is happening?
Yep.
So like sometimes it's like very helpful, and sometimes I'm like, what are you doing? And then part of it is that the AI, is it me as a developer not knowing the tool, or me as a developer
Yeah.
not actually understanding the changes that it's making and not being able to
Yeah.
catch it ahead of time? And Brandon, this is kind of like when someone tells me like AI is going to replace all the developers, like me, like being a developer and using AI, I'm like, I don't see how someone who doesn't understand the code that it's spitting out will be able to finish an actual project. Like there are like people that kind of say, look what I vibe coded and I made $10 million.
Yeah.
It's like any hype video, but in reality, it's like you could get into a lot of trouble. And I think like you said, use AI, understand how the tools work, be curious, and learn more about like web APIs, a general like knowledge about development. Like you, like if someone is like not curious about development, I'm like maybe this like job is not for you, because curiosity is like the most important thing you have as a developer. Like is because you're curious about how things work under the hood. It's not just like, let me prompt the AI and have it done, because part of the joy, at least for me, it's trying to figure out and solve an issue. Like, why am I getting stuck? Like, it's learning more about like development. And so to me, like
Yeah.
at this point, I'm not worried of AI taking our jobs, because working with AI, I realize it's just a tool, and it
Yeah.
could either be very helpful, and if you are not paying attention, you might not even realize the code that it's writing is sending you down the wrong path, and then you're gonna get too far, and then you're gonna like, oh man, I gotta delete so much stuff, and I have to do this stuff. So yeah, it's experience.
Yeah, I think it does have a tendency to turn a lot of people like back into junior devs. And so you can take that
Mm,
one of two ways. You can take it one way of just like, oh, I'm just not going to think, I'm going to turn my brain off. And like
yeah.
I think that's a very like cautionary tale, don't do that. And the other is like, oh, I'm a junior dev, I'm trying to actually learn. Like I'm actually just trying to have that mindset of curiosity and like, yeah, I don't know everything and I do want to verify and I do want to actually like build up like heuristics of how I should solve this. But exactly what you said, it's like, yeah, be a problem solver. At the end of the day, problem solvers are going to be the people who make money. They're going to be the people who actually like affect change in the world. So if you're not interested in being a problem solver and you just want like, you know, vibe code everything and just get the end result, and you don't actually care about like if it's solving a problem or what problems exist in that thing, then that's fine. You can go do that. But like, I don't know, the people I respect most in this industry and the people that I'm like learning from still are definitely more in the problem solver side of things. And they use AI all very differently than what you see on like viral posts.
Yes. And if you're not curious and you're not trying to learn how things work under the hood by breaking and fixing things and really understand what's happening, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And I think like the fear that I have is like relying on the tools so much that I actually start to become dumber. And I think there was a blog post somewhere on research done where that's kind of what seems to be, the more of your thinking you offload to something else, the
Mm-hmm.
less you're practicing that thing. So that kind of makes sense. And so to
Yeah.
me, every time I use AI, I use it like, teach me this, tell me why this, like point me in the
Mm-hmm.
right resources where I could read on or learn more. And I think that's very important to keep because if you're just trusting the process and you're not learning from the experience, I could see how like you're gonna do yourself a disservice. So I'm kind of like excited for the learning part of it and becoming a better developer through using AI properly. But I have a friend, I'm not gonna mention like where he works, but he's high up there. So he looks at PRs, and sometimes people come in, they're like really, really happy. They do a PR and they're like, oh, I did this PR. And they're
Mm.
like giggling because like, oh, I saved so much time because I vibe coded. And he literally is like, he's like, I know you vibe coded. Like you're not hiding anything. Like it's
Yeah.
apparent because here's like he's like, I can't even like look at this PR until you fix A, B, and C. And so like even though like AI came a long way by fully trusting AI and thinking that it's going to do your job for you, you're literally like doing yourself a disservice. And to me, like every time I talk to him, I'm like, did someone vibe code another feature? He's like, puts his head down and he's like frustrated. And to me, like
Yeah.
it's, I feel like it's like how to use the tool will decide where you are.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I don't want to keep you too long. I was going to ask, like, are there any like closing thoughts or anything that you wanted to share or mention, either in just general web dev or kind of like what's next for you in
Yeah,
React Router
yeah, yeah,
7?
yeah. Well, if you're interested in more of like the development of Remix, I'll go ahead and plug Remix Jam. So that's going to be a conference we're hosting in October of this year. So come hang out. We'll have a live stream. So even if you're not able to make it out, you'll still be able to see it, and we'll obviously make announcements and share everything that we're sharing there. But if you want to, meet up in person, come to Toronto, Canada, at the Shopify office. We're gonna hang out and show some stuff off, and yeah, just generally try to get like-minded people who care about the web and the future of the web together to hang out. So I definitely want to plug that and say that's very much where when people ask what Remix V3 is going to be, I'm just going to keep pointing them to that. As far as React Router, yeah, it's still pretty solid, and it's going to keep getting better. We have a lot of features coming up, so feel free to reach out if you have questions or if you even have feature proposals or ideas. We're trying to pivot to letting the community kind of speak into the project a lot more than we have. And the community's always been a big part of it. We always have had a proposal process, but we're wanting to lean into that even more now that this the framework piece is getting a lot more stable than it's ever been. So
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Brooks. And that was a great chat.
cool. Thanks, Paul.